Hello, Nikhil. How are you?
Hi, Sadaf. I'm all right. How are you?
Everything has been great. It's so good to see you after a while. I know it's been a
Yeah,
long time. You've
it's
been
been
very
around two
busy.
years nearly, I think. Yeah, 2 years to date nearly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
2 years. So a lot has happened in those 2 years, I'm sure. I can't
yeah,
wait to get your news. I know you went to HSC Paris, your first choice, and
yeah.
you are done with it also. So I would like to start just by asking you about that experience. What was it like from the inside being a student?
I think when I was going, I had like my expectations were so high that realistically nothing could have beaten it. But they did come very close. I mean, the first thing, the cohort that I had was it made introduced me to how intense this like world is for business school,
Hmm.
especially because I had come from a computer science background. I didn't know much or anything about what business school realistically was, except what you could read on business school websites. And so when I was meeting everyone, I realized that everyone came from like it was all from top universities, all from top places. Everyone had loads of experience, and just it was a very international experience, which was really nice to begin with. And then we can speak more about the cohort later. But and then just to give you an overview, the courses were basically they were what they HEC was very transparent with their courses, which was really nice. So it was basically just an investment banking boot camp if I'm being
Okay.
honest. That's pretty much what I
Okay.
describe it as.
That's what
And
you were looking for, no?
and that is exactly what I was looking for. Realistically, they taught you what you needed to know, and they were very helpful when it came to interview prep, and they were also very helpful when it came to reaching out because the alumni capabilities of the school were massive. So you could reach out to whoever you wanted, and everyone was very receptive of it because it was such a small cohort. It's 150 kids for the masters in finance.
Hmm.
It's a very
Hmm.
small compared to like other universities that are quite big, like LSC,
Hmm.
for example. And given that it was so small, people are very receptive to reaching out, so which was quite nice as well. And then the professors were the professors. So to be honest, they were as nice as they could be, but as hard as they could also be. And it was like a big, wide opening lesson for me of how they treated you compared to like a UK university. For example, you couldn't miss a class in HEC Paris, otherwise your grade would go from an A to a B automatically, no matter what grade you got in the exam. And
Really?
yeah, so for that was a very big eye-opening because in UK universities, you didn't have to go, you just had to sit the exam realistically. And so it actually made you like build like it was very good for like prepping you for like actually starting a job because my classes started at 7:30 in the morning.
Hmm.
So I had to wake up early. I had to get into that like routine, which was really good for when I started my internships.
So tell me about the nature of the Masters in Finance. Was it as academically rigorous as it's made out to be?
Yes. Oh, it's a great question. I would say that the first like couple weeks are very, very simple, especially for me because we were coming from a computer science background. They allowed us from STEM to really like have 3 to 4 weeks of just basically basics, accounting, basic corporate finance, and really introductory courses. And then they feel that you're ready to join the people that did finance or did accounting and finance in an undergrad and had done M&A experience, had proper M&A experience. And so you basically after 4 weeks for me, you join those classes and then you're like bottom of the pile compared to what
Hmm.
everyone else is at. And realistically, you also don't want to ask questions because you feel like you're a bit dumb. So you don't ask
4 weeks is
questions and
quite
then
a crash course. 4 weeks is,
yeah,
you're covering for a lot of time other people have spent
yeah.
studying those subjects.
So yeah, we had to start basic accounting and finance and a basic accounting and finance for the first 3 to 4 weeks. And then once you join the rest of the cohort in your specialization, it becomes a free for all to be honest. And yeah, which is really fun. But it was very intense to say the least.
So tell me, what was the best thing about the program and what was the worst thing?
I think the best thing about the program was just how intensive it is for what you want to do. For example, because if you want to do markets and if you or you want to do finance, they have the specialization like courses. They really like allow you to go deep into what you want to do, especially in the world of
Hmm.
finance. And they have consulting classes as well if you want to do that as well. But not a specialization for consulting, but they have extracurriculars that you can do. And so because it gave me that opportunity to basically deep dive, it was, as I say, an investment banking boot camp, which is what I wanted. And it was what it said on the lid, which is what I really liked. It was very transparent with it. What I didn't like as much was if you missed the class, your grade went from an A to a B. I was just like, okay,
Hmm.
that's quite intense. And it was just Also, it was quite handholdy, which obviously I actually didn't like to begin with. So, for example, the A to the B thing, I felt very handholded, but I actually kind of enjoyed that aspect as well because they were there for you when you had an interview and they were there for you when you didn't, and they would help you out if you didn't get an internship as well, because
Okay.
their whole thing is they're going to get you an internship pretty much at the end of it.
Okay,
And that's once
that's
one.
a great, nice to have for people to know that they're going to
eh,
really, the career services is really
The
supporting you.
career
Tell me
services
more
are
about them.
the career services are very supportive. So I had a couple friends that didn't land anything in the year, which
Hmm.
was, I think 98% of people landed something from the
Amazing.
cohort, and then 2% didn't. And then those 2%, I haven't spoken to them, so I don't, they'll know much more detail about it. But I think that they basically just started reaching out to the HEC Talented, which is our recruitment people that help us with jobs. And they basically were just like sending CVs to old alumni to just see if they could help or anything. For example, I had an interview with Point 72, and I had I went to HEC Talented, and then I ended up having 5 conversations with current people that worked there
Mm,
who I had reached out to beforehand from HEC who didn't respond, but because HEC Talented emailed them, they actually responded to me, and I had 5 conversations with them. So they were
amazing.
very good for the recruitment process.
That is an excellent benefit to have. That's the insider advantage. Um, I want to ask you, when people ask me, when they're reaching out to alumni, what should I ask them?
Yeah,
I ask them to ask this question. So I want to ask you the same question,
of
which
course.
is tell me 2 things about HEC Paris that I would not know if I wasn't a student there.
Ooh, okay. Well, great question. I think how diverse it is. So, especially in the Masters in Finance course that I took, it was everyone was from everywhere. So you get a very big international cohort. But of course, you have 50 people that are French, and then the rest
Hmm.
aren't. So you have a third that are French. I expected it to be 50% to 60% French. So that's a big thing for you as well for if you want to meet new people. Secondly, the thing that you don't know about the course is actually just how intense it is, I would say, is one thing. So for example, what I would like to have known before joining was that I would have 3 days to do my exams after we finished. And I had to juggle interviews, exams, and they didn't, especially when it came to exams, if you had an interview, they would ask you to book that interview. They wouldn't move
Oh,
exams for
really?
you. Yeah, so we had a lot of people dealing with that. Sadly, surprisingly, I didn't have to deal with that, thank God, but a lot of my friends had to deal with that. So it is just the first 6 months are probably the most intense months of any course or any university I've ever been taken a part of. So yeah, I think that would be nice to have done.
So let me take you back to the time before you started. I remember when we were applying, you were very
Yeah.
clear that HEC Paris was your top choice.
Yeah.
So why was it ranked number
Well,
one for
I
you then?
felt for me, if looking through every other course, I'd come from a STEM background, and so I didn't have the finance and accounting like acumen that everyone else would have had, or a lot of people had. And I felt that HEC really cared about that type of thing because they are trying to push for more STEM students to apply to finance as they see AI as the next big thing. And so they like people who understand it a little bit more than a finance background. And when it came to like Imperial LSC, they didn't really have like that. As I described, the 3 to 4 weeks of just doing basic accounting and finance until launch you into the program. Whereas like Imperial, they had course they'd just give you packets over the summer where you had to teach yourself, and I felt that that was just like disingenuine of
Hmm.
what they expected from a student. And like so that I've basically did made my choice over that decision because of that, and I felt that they cared more about you as a student as well. So
I remember when you had your interview coming up, or rather
yeah,
after your interview, you had a particularly tough question on DCF analysis, and I
I had
always
it.
tell
Yeah,
other
I had it.
applicants about it. I think it was a great example of how to prepare for an interview. So tell us about it.
So I had actually the DCF analysis question wasn't the difficult one. I believe it was the beta analysis question that they asked me. So when you're calculating your implied equity beta, how do you actually do it? And I didn't. I knew the answer for verbatim because I'd practiced it, but if I hadn't looked at that, I would have absolutely failed that question. And then they went a bit deeper So the whole point of the interview is basically they will ask you, introduce yourself for 5 minutes, and then you basically have the floor for 5 minutes to tell them why you want to do the course, then why you want to be at HEC, and then they'll ask you whatever's on your CV. So they will pick up a bullet point on your CV, and I surprisingly had a DCF on my CV, which I did not regret, but I should have. And they picked up on that, and they were like, "Oh, you came from a STEM background. How do you know about this?" And I was like, "I'm doing an M&A internship right now," so I had to learn it very quickly. And they were like, "Okay, how do you calculate free cash flow analysis? How do you calculate free cash flow like that?" And I was equation, I had to tell them the equation, and they were like, "Okay, what happens if things change in the cash? How does that affect enterprise value?" And so you had to really know the things that were on your CV quite well, which
Hmm.
was which is the advice I'd give any applicant. And then the question that I found very difficult was the beta question, where they asked me, "What is it mathematically?" I had no idea. I'll be the most honest person. I got it completely. I said it's like how correlated the assets were together, which is like a good description of it. But they were like, "Oh, what is it mathematically?" And I didn't know the equation
You
for
clearly
verbatim.
did well enough that that was not a problem. So I
So I
think
didn't know
that
the equation for the verbatim, and they basically I just said, "Look, could you please explain it to me because this will help me for my job?" And I got a piece of paper out and I wrote down what they said. So that was the best thing that I could think of, especially in that situation, to do. But yeah, I didn't know the answer. So
I think that's excellent. It's such a good example of where you don't need to actually know the answer to everything. But I think what you demonstrated in that moment, if I put my admissions hat
yeah,
on, is that you were willing to learn. You didn't just be
yeah,
like, oh, I don't know it and move on.
no,
It
that's
was
it.
like, teach
Yeah,
me now. And I think, especially when you have a professor interviewing you, because I think one of them was a professor,
yeah.
right?
There was
I
one
think
professor. Yeah,
they love a student who is in an interview so keen to learn
yeah.
that they would be great in the
Well, I
classroom.
didn't
So
know
very
how to
well done to
react.
you.
I didn't know how to react, so I was just like, okay, this is the next best thing that I can do here because I didn't have the
Excellent.
answer, and so
It
yeah.
is the best approach. Well done on that. Tell me, when you were putting all the essays together, and even that time you were really busy, how did you manage like the planning and the scheduling of getting it all done on the
Well, you
side?
helped with that to most like you helped a lot with that, to be honest. You really helped me with my essays, and I can't thank you enough for that. But I think it was just like this was my goal, and for me, it was like this is what I want to do, and this is what I so I have to do this. Like even if I'm doing these essays at 2 in the morning when I come back from my internship, like I have to do this. So otherwise, I'm not going to have next year. And so it was just the cost benefit of like opportunity cost, as a finance student would say, of not doing the essays. And so I dealt the decision was that I just have to do them. And so it was just honing in on the goal that I really wanted to achieve. And so, yeah, it was just holding myself to that high standard of what had to be done for it.
Excellent, because everybody is so busy and they think they can kind of shortcut their way through it, but everybody
No,
who gets in has done the work.
I'll be the first to admit that I tried shortcutting the first time I did it. And yeah, it did not go my way. So I knew that after that experience, I realized that I had to do this I had to do this as properly as possible. And it actually made me decide not to. So, we didn't actually send any applications to other universities because I felt that if I had divvied up my time, I wouldn't, because I didn't have a lot of time during the day.
Mhm.
But if I did divvy up my time and write the essays for three other universities, that they weren't going to be good enough, and it would have taken my essays away from HEC, so they weren't going to be good enough as well. And so it would have all accumulated to just rejection after rejection. That's how I thought it was going to go. And so I got
No,
fortunate enough that applying to one, I got into one. But I mean, not yeah, I would say that's pretty lucky. And so yeah, I would say go to two. Don't extend yourself to try and apply to all universities. I would say 2 to 3, and then just go from there. But yeah, it
yes, it
depends how
also
much time
depends
you
when in the
realistically have.
cycle. Yes, and
Yeah.
when in the cycle you apply, like early in the cycle, you can be
Oh,
more
as early
aggressive.
as
Right at the
early
end,
as I think you have to apply early as possible. So anyone that messages me on LinkedIn, for example, saying, "Oh, do you have any advice?" and it's
Mhm.
June, I'm just like, you're in cycle 4. Like this is probably the hardest time you'll ever actually. This was the hardest time to apply to HEC, for example. And so I would just apply as early as possible. Get your GMAT score done in the summer, and then
Mhm.
when you have clarity on the score, then start actually just doing essays. That's how I would do it. If I could go back, that's exactly what I would do.
Who did you use for your references?
My references were quite funny. I used a professor because you have to get one university professor. So I took a professor that I got my highest score from in my undergraduate degree. I was like, but I never, the funny thing is I never spoke to him.
Hmm.
So I got kind of worried about his reference, and I actually emailed him after he said submitted, and I was like, "Can I have the opportunity to read it?" And it was one sentence.
Oh
Yeah, it was genuinely
no,
just one sentence. It was, "He's a smart boy. He'll do very well in your course." That is it.
this is what not to do in the admissions
Yeah,
process.
yeah. And I was just like, okay, so that's not that. That gave me a sleepless night for a couple sleepless nights, and then I had a VP on my team write my reference, who
Okay.
basically just he wrote a very good reference. I got to read it, and it was very detailed. So like, yeah, I'm very thankful to him for combating um
Ah,
the other
we should
reference.
have
But yeah,
spoke on your references, not just on your essays. But tell me,
yeah, no.
why did you decide to work with an admissions consultant?
But generally because I didn't have all the time in the world, realistically, and I know loads of people won't. And you've done it before, so having someone who's gone through this process a lot more already is just you already have the experience that I don't have. And for example, like if I could tell myself what to do now, I think I'd have had a lot easier time writing those essays. And so yeah, so I had that thought, and then it was just like I don't have all the time in the world to formulate my ideas. I can't pull up a Word document during my internship and try and edit my essays because I'll get fired realistically. And so yeah, it was just that decision of just timing and a visibility on how to actually progress. For example, you would read my questions that I was given, and you would basically know how to answer them in a certain way. And you'd give me the bullet points that, and then I'd go back away and actually write them. And then you would just basically rip it to shreds and we'd redo it until it was perfect, pretty much. And I just needed that thought process because like I would read a question one way and you'd read it in a completely different manner. And so we ended up our essays being, if I had written it by myself, I wouldn't have answered the proper question or the underlying question, as you always describe it as.
Yes, thank you for remembering the question behind the question.
Yeah, the question behind the question was always a big topic. So yeah.
What advice would you give now to anybody who's starting this process of applying for a master's in finance?
Good luck. It's it's very extensive. I think it would be just to systematically break it down on what you need to do. So the first thing is your GMAT is a very special thing, especially for like UK kids who are applying to like Imperial, LSC, Oxbridge. I would say even they say they don't want it, I would say just go and do it. Like there's because it gives you an advantage to tell you I did get my 720 or whatever score you get. And whereas it gives you that comparison to like other people from foreign countries who have done their GMAT, they know their score, whereas they'll have to make a gamble on you of whether what you would get realistically. So I would say do your GMAT first, do it as many times as you feel necessary. And then from there, then just systematically break down what schools you want to go to from your GMAT score, because it all does come from your GMAT score. So like in HEC, there was no one who had below 690, I think, in my program. And of course, the other, like the min was 680, I think. So I had a 720 or 710 at the time. And so I think that it all does come from that. And then you can really make your decision of what schools that you should have the highest opportunity to get into. And
Brilliant.
then
And
your essays are very important as well.
yes. And then tell me what does the future goals hold for you?
So I did an internship in Man Group for in equities and in funds and in quant, and I really enjoyed the equities side because I got to like lead with curiosity. My own analysis was like very close to the outcome, and I really enjoyed that. I always thought it was going to be M&A and then go to a hedge fund and then do the 2 years. And so I got kind of fortunate enough that Man Group did give me an opportunity to see what an institutional investor was like, and I never want to leave. So I want to just stay in that type of world. I found it very fun. And so I'm now having the realization that business school might have been hard, but this is even harder to even figure out, to be honest. And so it's just, I've got a couple interviews lined up for seats, for graduate seats, because weirdly the buy side is coming more open to hiring graduates from school rather than going to investment banking and then the sell side and then coming here. So they're being a bit more open, which is quite nice. But when I say open, it's like 2 seats for 3,000 applicants. So it's still very, very competitive. And so I'm just trying to stay in this world as long as possible. Self-sided, I'm done. I'm not doing that. I'm all right.
I love it. I love it. I love your motivation. I love your dedication. And I wish you the very best of luck. It was so nice to hear all your insights. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
taking out
much.
the time.
No
And
worries.
keep me posted on
I will,
how
of
things
course, keep you
progress.
posted. I will for sure. Thank you for having me.